China tensions. In a tit-for-tat move, China has ordered the closure of the U.S. consulate in Chengdu. The move comes 3 days after the U.S. ordered China to shut down its consulate in Houston. The Consulate General of the United States in Chengdu was one of the 7 American diplomatic missions in China. The consulate district, among other places, included Tibet. In a statement, the Chinese Foreign Ministry made it clear that it was a retaliatory move against the closure of the Houston consulate. It said that the measure taken by China is a legitimate and necessary response to the unjustified act by the United States. Beijing also said that it is not violating international law. Tensions escalated between Washington and Beijing after the United States asked China to shut down its consulate in Houston within 72 hours. The US said the consulate was helping Chinese nationals steal American intellectual property. Details, I'm joined in by our correspondent Richard Kimber, who's joining us live from Hong Kong this hour. Richard, a very warm welcome to you. Now that China has ordered the closure of a U.S. consulate as a retaliatory response, is not the consulate war just another front through which tensions are ratcheting up between the two nations?
This Chengdu consulate is an interesting development for the China's retaliation because it's specifically a key listening post for US efforts to try and understand what's happening in the western region of Tibet. Now, Tibet has long been a sore point between the East and the West in terms of superpower diplomacy because China has long sought to try and suppress dissent towards the Chinese government coming from the region of Tibet. So it's been a very important place for the US to have ears and eyes to understand what's happening there. So to close down the Chengdu consulate has added significance. It's not just a random move by China, a very deliberate move to try and close down a consulate that the US has long been using to try and understand how dissent is forming towards the Chinese government. So that's the reason that Chengdu has been targeted in this way.
Right, it's interesting. You mentioned the strategic importance of the consulate in Chengdu being shut down. Now, how do you view the developments in the backdrop of Mike Pompeo's hawkish stance on hardening the approach towards China and the indictment of 4 Chinese nationals in the United States?
Well, that's right. Mike Pompeo pulling no punches. He's been describing the reason that they had to shut down the consulate in Houston as being nothing other than massive theft of intellectual property. And in a speech yesterday, he really made it clear that he has no intention under his watch of allowing the Chinese Communist Party to develop further in the way that he says it is. There's no question that there's going to be further action from the US if his words stand up with the actions that he and the Trump administration are planning to take. The real question is how, if at all, any diplomatic relations can continue if instead of any conversation taking between the two superpowers, instead there is just this continued tit-for-tat retaliatory action. China is trying to play what it likes to think of as being the straight card in this relationship by saying that it's only responding to US actions, it's not provoking US actions, and that's a key line that the Chinese Foreign Ministry has been pushing in recent weeks as this relationship has worsened. But in the international world, there's clearly still a lot of pressure on China, particularly through what's happening here in Hong Kong because of the pressure on the Chinese government over the national security law. So really, until there's a return to dialogue, the like of which we became used to during the trade talks between the US and China, it seems unlikely that this kind of tension will actually simmer down.
Well, actually, it's interesting how you mentioned Hong Kong. I'd actually like you to tell me more about how the United States is using Hong Kong, Taiwan, and even India as a part to counterbalance China's growing clout.
Well, certainly Hong Kong has ended up stuck in the middle to a certain extent between the Chinese-US situation. Just yesterday, of course, there was a big story here relating to the British National Overseas Passport citizenship offer. Another example where Hong Kong ends up stuck in the middle between East and West, because in this case, not the US, but the UK trying to exert more pressure on China.
The Cold War between the United States and China is intensifying. America shut down the Chinese consulate in Houston. Now China has responded. Beijing wants the US to close its consulate in Chengdu. China says this consulate is meddling in its internal affairs. This is classic tit-for-tat diplomacy. The US accused China of snooping through the Houston consulate. Now China is paying back in the same coin.
Urged the United States to immediately retract its erroneous decision and create the necessary conditions for bringing the bilateral relationship back on track. Some of the personnel of the US Consulate General in Chengdu activities that were not in line with their identities, interfered in China's domestic affairs, and harmed China's national security interests. China has lodged solemn representations on several occasions, and the US is well aware of this.
America has 5 consulates in mainland China. Why did Beijing choose this one? Chengdu is in China's Sichuan province. It's a hub for China's commercial expansion into Central Asia. Chengdu was a valuable outpost for America. Reports say it was used to gather information on Xinjiang and Tibet. Xinjiang has been in focus internationally after China began persecuting Uyghur Muslims there. Beijing has ordered similar crackdowns against the Tibet independence movement. America is using both these issues, Uyghurs and Tibetans, to counter China. So China wants the consulate shut. How did the people of China react to this announcement? They were celebrating, apparently. The story was a top trending topic on Chinese social media, Weibo. Take a look at this photograph. It was posted by Chinese state media CCTV. The text in bold means retaliation. That's what they see it as, retaliation by China. Chengdu is known for its hot pots. It's one of the popular meals in China. Now, some users on Chinese social media suggested that the American consulate could now be turned into a hot pot restaurant. Clearly, the Chinese want to make a big deal out of this. One post said, many people were spotted near the US consulate. Apparently, they wanted to see if America will burn any documents. Well, why would they? Because Chinese diplomats did the same in Houston. They set some papers on fire after the US ordered the consulate to shut down. But the Americans provided no such spectacle. No documents were burned, no smoke came out of the consulate. Someone did set off some firecrackers, though. The consulate has been given 72 hours to close. The US is not expected to buckle. In fact, it looks like it's willing to take on China. In recent weeks, America has sanctioned Chinese officials, cut off access to American technology, and challenged Beijing over the South China Sea. US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has been at it. Today, he called China a Frankenstein and declared that the US will lead the fight against the Communist Party.
President Nixon once said he feared he had created a Frankenstein by opening the world to the CCP. And here we are, securing our freedoms from the Chinese Communist Party is the mission of our time. And America is perfectly positioned to lead it because our founding principles give us that opportunity.
Defense, trade, technology, and human rights, the United States and China are battling on several fronts now. With the closure of the American consulate in Chengdu, this battle is only set to intensify, it seems.
Meanwhile, the US has arrested 3 Chinese nationals, charging them with visa fraud for allegedly lying about their affiliations with the Chinese army. A 4th research associate has been declared a fugitive by the FBI, which is investigating the matter. He is said to be hiding in the Chinese consulate in San Francisco. In a press release, the US Justice Department said that members of China's armed forces applied for visas while hiding their true affiliations with the People's Liberation Army of China, or PLA. Washington has accused these Chinese nationals of trying to steal sensitive research from American universities. The FBI has also conducted interviews of US visa holders suspected of having undeclared affiliation with the Chinese military in across 25 American cities. If convicted, then the Chinese nationals will face up to 10 years in prison.
China started its nuclear program in the 1950s. China has more than 300 nuclear warheads. It is expanding its capacity, and it has hit a major roadblock. China's top scientists are leaving. Our cover story tonight is about a mass resignation of nuclear scientists in China. And when I say mass resignation, I mean 90 scientists, 90. Why have 90 nuclear scientists resigned in one go? What were they privy to How big a setback is this for China? Alarm bells are ringing in Beijing. The Communist Party of China has launched an investigation. They're calling it brain drain. But considering the brains were China's best nuclear minds, possibly with access to sensitive information, this is quite a drain. These people were supposed to drive China's most ambitious projects, but now they're driving out of state-run research centers. Here is one such. In China's eastern city of Hefei, the Institute of Nuclear Energy Safety Technology, or INEST, an otherwise unassuming building, it is now in the headlines. This is the institute that has lost 90 scientists in one go. They no longer wish to work here, and the Communist Party is not happy about their decision. The rest of the world is curious about this. What happened? What caused the exodus? These are the questions doing the rounds, and to understand that, we must first know more about the institute. It is part of the Hefei Institutes of Physical Science. This is under the state-run Chinese Academy of Sciences, which is China's top research body. INEST specializes in advanced nuclear energy and safety technology. It participates in more than 200 national and international projects. It has about 600 members. 80% of the researchers have a PhD degree. And they were working on some serious and important projects, like strategy, research, and nuclear energy and nuclear safety. Stuff like designing and engineering new nuclear reactors, research on nuclear emergency and radiation protection. The Institute runs various research programs. This includes projects with the International Atomic Energy Agency, or IAEA. Like I said, this is a Chinese state institute. So it has to contribute towards programs of the state, the government, like China's National High-Tech R&D program, also known as the 863 program, something that was started under Deng Xiaoping. It was designed to target key sectors with deficiencies, sectors that China thinks are crucial for long-term competitiveness and national security. Advancements in nuclear technology is clearly part of this list. Now, last year, INEST was in the news for developing a virtual nuclear power plant, something that can be used for safety assessment. And that's the kind of work that these scientists were doing. Now, 90 of them have left. And I must make it clear, they have resigned, they were not fired. Their action has fired up many conspiracies and theories, and we won't dwell on the ones that talk about bad bosses or poor facilities. Some serious systemic issues have come to light. Number one, in June, INEST employees clashed with the staff of their parent institute. Reports say they fought over who gets to control access to their facilities. Number two, the institute was unable to get big projects due to lack of funding. That's the second theory. And number three, the researchers were poached by private companies. Does that happen in China too, where lines between private and public are blurred? Whatever the reason, the Communist Party is very worried. China's Vice Premier Liu has announced that a team will be sent to investigate these mass resignations. This announcement was posted on the institute's website. And all of this should tell you how serious the matter is. A lot of China's top nuclear talent has left. At its peak, this institute had 500 members. Last year, the figure dropped to 200, according to some reports, and now it is believed to have only 100 researchers. The fact is that scientific research in China largely is in the hands of state-run universities and research institutes. They're controlled by Beijing, they're managed by the Communist Party of China, and that is where the problem lies. You see, innovation requires much more than government funds. Innovation requires a system that supports critical thinking and freedom of exploration. But in China, even research has no-go zones and state sponsorship. Is it any wonder then that top scientists are leaving?
The CDC says it is investigating a growing outbreak of Salmonella, but doesn't know where the infection is coming from. According to the agency, the outbreak was first identified July 10th when there were 13 reports from 3 states. But within a matter of 10 days, the outbreak grew to a total of 135 people from 15 states. No deaths have been reported, but at least 24 people have been hospitalized.
With 125 people in 15 states, including here in North Carolina, have gotten sick in a Salmonella outbreak. First case was reported about a month ago. Health officials right now still trying to find out the source for that outbreak.
tonight, Josephine County Public Health is still investigating a Salmonella outbreak potentially linked to a Grants Pass restaurant. Over the weekend, the county put out a survey asking people who ate at C. Casa Flores in Grants Pass and asking if they had any symptoms. Less than 50% of people who answered the survey had symptoms, but the county says a fair number of people who ate at the restaurant did check many symptom boxes.
The outbreak actually is bigger than Southern Oregon. There are many other cases throughout the state, so this isn't isolated to just Southern Oregon.
Public Health says the outbreak might have something to do with produce. They're asking you to wash your produce, and if you have an irregular color or smell to it, to throw it away.
现在是叙利亚当地时间晚上10点左右。大家可以看到，现在在叙利亚首都大马士革的上空呢，有很多的这个亮点儿。那这个亮点儿呢，都是叙利亚的防空系统正在拦截入侵叙利亚领空，尤其是大马士革上空的这个导弹。我不知道大家现在能不能听到，我现在是可以听到非常清楚的、非常巨大的这种爆炸的声音。发生在叙利亚境内的大部分的这个导弹的空袭，都是来自于以色列。大家可以看到，现在离我很近的这个导弹。看到远处的这个爆炸，都是叙利亚防空系统正在对这些导弹进行拦截。可以看到，现在空袭仍然在持续，仍然没有停止，不时的有导弹被击落，然后爆炸发出火光。然后近焦距给大家看一下，大家看到，现在的空袭仍然在继续。大家可以看到，现在的这个导弹依然在这个大马士革上空乱飞呀。
One disaster after another. That is how you can sum up the year 2020 for China. The Wuhan virus is yet to slow down, but China is staring at yet another crisis. Its worst flood in decades. China says its worst in 100 years. Now, floods in China are an annual affair. They happen every year. But this time, it is far worse. So much so that China had to blast a dam. This happened on Monday. China had to demolish a dam to release the surging waters behind it. More than 30 million people have been affected. We've been reporting on the floods on this show. Tonight we have a question. You see these pictures on your screen. Is this another man-made disaster? Could this have been avoided? It's a very important question because it affects the life of nearly 500 million people. 500 million. Entire cities in China lie underwater now. The worst hit are those who live along the Yangtze River. Let me tell you about this. It is the longest river in Asia, the third longest in the world, some 6,300 kilometers long. That's the Yangtze River. The basin of this one river, Yangtze, covers about 1/5 of China's land. It is home to nearly 1/3 of China's population. China tried to tame this river. It built the world's largest hydropower project on the river Yangtze. A monstrosity that has turned into a ticking time bomb now. I'm talking about the Three Gorges Dam. It is China's biggest, and it's about to collapse. Experts fear it could break in these floods. And you know what that would mean? It would mean catastrophe for 500 million people, the people who live on the Yangtze Basin. They're living in the shadow of fear. The water levels are rising to the point where the dam may not be able to sustain the pressure. It's been opening its gates to release the waters, but the pressure is not easing. The situation in China is critical, and as always, China has dismissed the concerns. Chinese officials say this dam is rock solid. It will survive the floods and rains. China's state media says the same. But the pictures tell a very different story. So here's a question again. Why is the Chinese government so keen to show that this dam is strong? Because this dam has become a matter of their credibility and pride. You see, this dam is very, very controversial. When it was pitched first, about 30 years back, there was a lot of opposition. But the government told its people and the world that the Three Gorges Dam is the one-stop solution to China's biggest problems. The government's promises were sky high. Listen to the list, the promises they made. China said the dam would generate power. It would boost irrigation. It would improve the navigability of rivers. It would protect homes from floods. Well, turns out the dam has only worsened all these problems. Far from stopping the floods, it is worsening them. On Friday, Chinese authorities issued warnings. They expect more rain, so people should brace for more pains. The Three Gorges Dam is hitting new flooding records. Last week, 3 floodgates were opened. Water levels behind those gates rose more than 50 feet above the flood zone. Associated Press has reported that the Chinese military has been called now, and they have been testing the strength of the embankments, shoring them up with sandbags and rocks. It is said that many cities, as I also said, are already flooded. On the 29th of June, the dam had discharged water in anticipation of the flood. Soon after that, downstream cities witnessed flooding. Residents in Wuhan and provinces of Anhui, Jiangxi, and Zhejiang are severely hit. On Friday, they received a red alert, and this is the highest level of alert, the red alert. Dam authorities are under scrutiny now. Why did they discharge water when they knew it would lead to flooding? Well, they say the problem is not with the discharge. They blame the floods on a poor drainage system. So as the crisis intensifies, so does the blame game. The biggest blame lies with the government in Beijing. It created a dam that is not serving its purpose. The dam designed to stop floods is causing them. More than 140 people have either died or disappeared so far, but these are only official figures. We have no way of verifying the actual numbers. And even by official estimates, 28,000 homes have been destroyed. The economic damage is now close to $12 billion. And it's not over yet.